Hey, welcome back everyone to the Progressive Brothers podcast. This is episode 72. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Progressive Brothers podcast. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter at brothers_podcast. So, I wanted to talk about today's topic today, which is September 18th, the day that the J6 sympathizers showed up at the Capitol to commemorate their quote-unquote political prisoners. And what I find interesting is that the political prisoner aspect is really taken from all of the abolitionists historically that have always been on the left, who always stood for liberty and justice against the system that was considered to be tyrannical. Now, these people that they're advocating for are insurrectionists who actually broke the law in the name of the people who voted in November 3rd and November 4th. And so they were dissatisfied, they being the insurrectionists, were dissatisfied with the results from the election and decided that they were going to disrupt the electoral certification process. Now, how that makes them patriots is something that I'm still trying to figure out myself, because a lot of the time when we talk about a patriot, we're talking about somebody who stands on the side of the state itself, beyond the call of duty, going above the call of duty for the state itself. That's not what happened here. And so I find it interesting. You have these people who showed up at the Capitol trying to pretend like they really care about the Constitution and the civil rights and of these people, but in reality, they really came there to disrupt the process, and that's what happened. Now, when it came to Black Lives Matter and all of their peaceful demonstrations, if you look at a lot of the video, the same Trump administration that these same people upheld on January 6th were the same people who advocated for overreach of the government to come in and disrupt the process of the First Amendment, which is the right to peacefully demonstrate in a public space. And that's what happened all throughout, the administration of the last 4 years of that administration, especially within the last year. And so it was not that many people at the protest itself. There were actually more law enforcement than there was protesters there, and just as many journalists as there were protesters. These people consider themselves to be advocates of political prisoners, but the actual political prisoners that happen to be Black, who are still in jail in the dungeons of the United States government from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Those people are still held in solitary confinement for crimes that have not even been proven guilty of. There's no evidence, no substantial evidence. Some of them is, upwards to 70, 80 years old, former Black Panthers, former civil rights advocates, and so on and so forth. In fact, John Lewis was one of those people who actually was a person who made good trouble, right? And he ended up going into Congress in the Senate. But what I'm saying here is that's not who they consider to be legitimate patriots, right? They consider white people who disrupt the political process, the electoral certification of the presidency, to be patriots. And the term patriot is used so much now, it really doesn't have any value. And so I look at all of this on Saturday, on September 18th, and I'm looking like, I don't think you really care about political prisoners, because if you really cared about political prisoners, you would have been advocating for Black and brown people long before January 6th. None of these people actually ever speak highly of Black people anyways, whether it's Philando Castile, Colin Kaepernick, or any of these other people who speak out in the name of their constitutional rights, whether it's the constitutional right to peacefully demonstrate or their constitutional right to own and carry a firearm within their state, or it's the right to privacy through the Fourth Amendment, or the 14th Amendment, which is equal protection under law, or the 15th Amendment that allows them to equally vote within the political system of democracy. None of these people are talking about any of this type of stuff. They're only focused on the white people who actually held in prison justly for trespassing and destruction of property on January 6th. And that's the minimum that they can actually be charged with. There's other charges that could actually be brought up against them, but they're not. And so I say all that because I thought that, September 18th was really interesting to see so many people walking around with Confederate flags talking about political prisoners and looking for justice for these people, and they should be freed. They're going to stand by their brothers and whatnot. And I'm like, do you really want to stand by these people who want to disrupt the political process of democracy? Because that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about somebody who was sleeping in their bed at night and decided, and the state decided that they were going to snatch these people out of their beds. That's not what happened. These people went up to the Capitol, they trespassed, they broke the law, they broke through the barricades, they beat police officers, even though they were talking about back to blue the whole entire summer of 2020. They did not really have a legitimate reason to be up there other than for the disruption of democracy. So how are they political prisoners if they were justly served under the law? There's a big sign outside of the Capitol. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. It says prohibition of items, right? These sort of items that they have listed within the Capitol itself, outside the rotunda, that says what kind of items can actually be possessed and not possessed within the within the Capitol itself. And you had many of these people jumping around with zip ties and body armor and tactical gear, and it's like, okay, so why did you come here? What were you expecting to have up there, and why were they going through all of the logs and books within the Senate chamber? That's not being a political prisoner. That's disrupting democracy so that you can't have a functional system. So these people don't really care about a functional system. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about the economic plight that's going to come out of not having a functional system. They don't care about the people who were going to be, executed that day because they had a gallows out there with a noose attached to it. So how are they political prisoners? All of these are signs of terrorism. And anybody who advocated for it were terrorist sympathizers. But see, in other countries like Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria, they use drones to attack these people over there just for being sympathizers. Look at bin Laden's limousine driver. But see, when it comes to these people on January 6th, the September 18th sympathizers, the Insurrection caucus, because I guarantee you these people are going to run for office based on the political prisoners that they're going to advocate to get these people out of. They don't want to actually have drones flying over their states, their conservative states, and actually bombing them like they do in other countries. If they were so concerned about political prisoners and whatnot, why aren't they concerned about closing Guantanamo Bay? Not concerned about that because only brown people go to Guantanamo Bay, not white people. And so it was a pretty lackluster event. Nothing to really be seen. I watched it all morning, and I thought that it was interesting to see so many people, clapping their hands in celebration of these speeches that were being given by all of these grifters who claim to be conservative, but only conservative when it's convenient for them. But when it comes to the constitutional rights of black and brown people, or black people in particular, they don't really care. Same people who were okay with George Floyd being killed got a problem with insurrectionists at the Capitol being arrested and being locked away for months at a time. Especially this guy with the horns on his head. Somehow he's a political prisoner. But George Floyd, he got what he deserved because, he was on a speedball or something like that. These are the same people who talk about being pro-lifers. So, no, I don't feel sorry for these people, and no, I don't sympathize with them at all. I think they got what they deserve, and when it comes to the protest, it was a fake protest. It was lackluster at best. Like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on Twitter at brothers_podcast.